Hello, greetings everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster on this wonderfully shiny afternoon. Anyways, I want to thank you for coming out, and we're doing an episode of What's New today. Yeah, every Thursday night we do a What's New episode. The band we have for this, I like this album a lot. It's very proggy album. Not a lot of I don't get a feel of a lot of other genres. This is pretty neo-prog sounding, but really good. The band's called Over Dreams. The album is called Geography. And now I do believe this is like their third album, or third or fourth album. But it was released January the 12th, 2024. About 49 minutes, almost somewhere halfway between 49 and 50 minutes in length on the independent label. The members of the band include Martin Majiri, vocals and guitar, Elizabeth Holder, vocals and keyboards, Ken Walker on keyboards and vocals, Randy Sandman on guitars, Paul Higginbottom on guitars, and Chris Parson on bass, drums, guitar, keyboards, and vocals. Chris Parsons, now, I went to a school with a guy, I can still picture him, blonde, almost white-haired, blonde-haired kid who was in my drafting class, and his name was Chris Parsons. So as soon as I seen that, that's the first thing that went into my head. Okay, so also there's three special guests on here, all doing backing vocals. Marlena Haynard on vocals for the part 4 on the first. There's 2 tracks on the album, so the first part has part 4 in the Roman numerals. It's called Lessons, and then Devin Bullock also does backing vocals on Lessons as well. And then you have George Parks, who does backing vocals on part 3, Grace on the second song, and it's called the Eagle Flies. So anyways, overall I found this to be a very kind of symphonic album, as I've said. Lots of good keyboards, lots of very proggy sounds to it. They've got two vocalists going, so you got very different vocal sounds on different tracks. Got some good, pretty solid backing vocals on some of the places where you have extra backing vocals on. I don't find the backing vocals to be very dominant on this album, so they're not as noticeable, but the front, definitely the forward vocals, the lead vocals are really well done, I think. And you've got some good guitar at times, but I wouldn't say the guitar is a predominant instrument. Maybe a little bit more in the riffing, not as much in the soloing. Keyboard solos are more dominant on this album than the guitar solos. So if you're a prog nut who likes his keyboards and keyboard solos, you probably will like this. If you like that neo-prog sound that came out in the early 80s, this will probably fall within that same wheelhouse. Drums are probably, I don't think of the drums as being a particularly dominant instrument on this one. Bass is a little bit more dominant, drums not as much. But overall, pretty strong album, symphonically anyways. And there are some parts on the album where the keyboards are pretty dominant instrument. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the album and a little bit about the songs individually. Normally I didn't actually rate any of the songs this time. Well, actually I did. I gave them both the same number, but I didn't rate the parts because they're not really broken down when you do the numbers. So the first song on the album is like 26 minutes, a little bit over 26 minutes long, but the parts aren't broken into any specific amount or time periods. It's kind of like when Rush did the 2112 album and they had the Roman numeral parts, or when they did the La Villa Strangata, when they had the Roman numeral parts, they weren't really broken into time frames, and this is very similar to that. And the cover of this album is really good. It's got an eagle flying over what I would call kind of an ancient city. Looks like it's at the estuary of a river going into the ocean. very kind of medieval kind of looking, but almost like something you would see in the Game of Thrones type of city. Yeah, really interesting. Album. So the first song is called Geography, and it has basically, I think it has 7 parts, 7 or 8 parts. So the parts include Prelude, Space and Shapes, the Summit, Lessons, which we talked about a little bit earlier, the Praise of the Dolphins, Illusions, Soft Conception, and Prelude Reprise. So the other song on the album is called Force of Nature, and it has 3 parts: Stealth, Ursus the Great One, referring to the bear, of course, and Grace the Eagle Flies. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the song as it plays along, what you're going to hear. So it starts out with the kind of synthesizer noises and gives this kind of, almost this kind of feeling like you're underwater. I don't know how to describe it any more than that. It's kind of a watery feel to it, I guess. It's a very, then it gets a little bit more heavy with some symphonic synthesizer and keyboard parts here as well. The keyboards are sharper. The guitar has a nice kind of riff to it, and the bass is a little heavier. The bass player, he's a little bit forward on this album, more than you would expect, but still definitely a fairly dominant individual on this part of this album. It does get a little bit sharp cutting. I'm not sure if that means anything. The parts are clipped, I guess, is another good term you could use. You could use either one, I guess. So again, when I'm doing this, I'm trying to imagine where these parts are going to play in, and you know you're in that part when you hear something that refers to it, but you don't always know where it starts. It's not as clear. The second track is a little clearer. So Prelude, which is one of the parts, it's got nice sound. It's very melodic. Lots of synths. Vocals are, I would say he's kind of in the moderate sound. There's nothing really outstanding or uncharacteristically strong about his voice. It's kind of, I guess, best indiscriminate. It's a good voice, but there's not really anything that, there's no like Bowie sound or any sound that you might say, hey, I know who that is. Oh, I know who that is. It's pretty indiscriminate. It's pretty standard sound, I think. The keyboards at the same time are kind of intermediate with the solo parts anyway, so you get a little bit of soloing here, a little bit there. That's kind of how that track goes at the beginning. So a lot as it goes along, you get a little bit more of the guitar, a little bit more bitey, a little bit more beefy. Then you get the female vocals, and I don't know what part it's in, but it starts with these female vocals, very high end, almost marshmallowy sounding, but smooth and clear. Like there's no haze or muddling or anything like that. Very clear voice. The drums are solid, but not really spectacular at all. Keyboards solo, I believe it's an organ. It sounds like an organ. They did this little keyboard solo. I think it's probably at the beginning of the Summit, but you don't know for a fact, but that's what it sounds like it would be at. You get to the part that's kind of like called the Lessons. You get the harmony vocals here, which are operatic at points, so you have these operatic vocals with some synthesizer, kind of what you call those, background noise, I guess. Yeah, that's what I would call it, kind of background sound to kind of make the vocals sound larger than they are. I guess that might be a reason for doing it that way. It does have a kind of a piano forward part to it. So you have the piano playing and the synths in the background covering up the kind of gaps, I guess, in the piano's soloish part. Very melodic acoustic guitar part on this particular track, and then again it's another song with some female vocals here. The range is a little more melodic, but it's also there's a little bit more of a range, a little bit further down, a little bit higher at times. Pretty good song though. Then they have the part, it's called Praise the Dolphins, and there's a part that says, you'll hear at the reason I know that we're kind of at that part is there's this kind of this watery sound, and you get the dolphin noises, those clicking noises that you hear from dolphins, which you'll know as soon as you hear it on the album. This is a more melodic song. I think it's a little bit subdued. The male voices same as the other male voices, very kind of indiscriminate, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think towards the end of this, you start to get this kind of guitar solo that's very melodic, very heavy, very appropriate for the sound. But it may be the beginning of another song, which is called another part called The Illusions. This is a very clear sounding part of the album, I think. Then an up-tempoed more part where there's a lot of keyboards and guitars going on here. Then it's fast playing of each of these instruments, and it's followed by a more softer key synthesizer part. And then you get multiple vocals, lots of keyboards, lots of flute-like feel to them. I don't know that this is the flute. It kind of sounds flutish, but there's nobody labeled doing flute for the album, so I'm thinking it's probably a keyboard noise that's been put in that range. And there's actually a kind of use of a classical guitar interlude here, which is different than any other part of the album. It's quite strong, really good. So that is the first song, which I believe is entitled Geography. 8-part suite. All the parts, you can kind of tell when you're in the part, but you don't often know where you start with it, and you don't often know where it's over, but you can tell when you're in it. So I kind of like everything labeled and know exactly where I'm starting, but I understand that some people don't like that because then it sounds choppy, and I get that. And a song like Fountain of Lameth, which I absolutely love, but I recognize it has a lot of that choppy sound to it. The second song I think I liked a little bit better. It's called Force of Nature. It has 3 parts: Stealth, Yours are the Great One, and Grace, Eagle Flies. This one has a more melodic, overall more melodic sound to it. So it starts out with this kind of melodic piano part. Both vocals are going here at the same time. So you got your male and female stuff going on. More of an up-tempo, instrumental, inclusive build-up in this song, which then slowly the keyboards start to dominate and take over the song. And the female vocal parts also do the same thing, kind of dominate and take over this part of the song. So then it starts to pick up a little bit, gets faster paced. The male vocals come in more. I would say it's more distinctive at this point than it was at in the first song. Kind of a heavy melodic riff going on as well with the keyboard solo. So you got this keyboard solo, it's a normal keyboard solo, and you got this melodic guitar riff behind it. It actually sounds quite good. And then you have a very forward keyboard part, which starts to take over and is dominated by keyboards and synthesizers. It picks up speed, the tempo gets faster and heavier, and the keyboards become more dominant. Then you have your guitar and bass riff going on in the background. You have some more guitar soloing, this part is probably the most lengthy part of the album, where you get a guitar solo, fairly lengthy. I'd say it's probably about 1.5 minutes in length, which is pretty long guitar solo for these guys. And then it's kind of melodic, deep keyboard part. It follows that. Then it builds up to more of a piano part, and then the females join in, so then you have both vocalists going, and then it's multi-vocalists. So I'm thinking this is the part in part 3 where all the vocalists are coming in that are singing in the song. And it's just a very slow, indeterminate part at the end of the album to end it. Overall, I would say this is very proggy. Vocals are good. I think the female vocal is probably better than the male. Not that not that the male vocals is bad. I just think he's very indiscriminate. There's nothing inflectual or anything abnormal about his voice, and it's not really that memorable. Where her voice is kind of a marshmallowy sound, almost kind of reminded me of Annie Haslam in that it's like that marshmallowy sound to it almost. But she is in no way close to that level of variance and a skill level and almost angelic sounding voice of Annie Haslam. But this girl is still very good. Elizabeth Holder, I believe. I think she's the only female on the album that sings every lead vocals. Anyway, so I think it's a pretty strong album. I don't think I would go and buy it brand new because you're gonna be paying $20 or $25 for it. I don't think it's worth $20 or $25. This is an album I would probably, if I saw it on for $10 or something like that, I would probably take it, maybe even as much as 12. I don't think I would want to take it for anything more than that. I did get my albums in the mail, and one of them I paid paid 30, and the other two I paid probably close to 40 for each, which is way too much. But sometimes you got to pay if you want to get stuff that you really like, and I liked all three of the albums I got. So, but this one, if I had to order it online, it's got to be like 8 or 9 online, because you know it's going to be 18 and 19 by the time you get it at the door. So yeah, just excellent album for those of you who money is not an object for. I think you'd like this if you really like that symphonic prog, that neo-prog. You'll like this stuff quite a bit. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of What's New. If you have, please hit the like and subscribe. If you've heard the album before, put your comments about it in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, and we will be back next Thursday with another episode of What's New. So take care and have yourself a good night. Bye.